5 years ago, a little more than 5 years ago, I was a graphic designer. I sat working at a computer all day, and I knew nothing about clothes except that I was destroying them. I was destroying all my jeans, and I was also looking for something a little more liberating, a little more versatile, something that could handle the weather better, that could take me around the city from a business meeting out on the town. And so, like a good American, I went shopping. I was like, oh, I need a better pair of pants. I'm going to go get a better pair of pants. And I went shopping for like a year, and I didn't buy anything. And eventually, you know, these pants didn't exist. And so eventually, I found myself here, which is a couple miles uptown from here, the Button kiosk in the Garment District. And I walked up to this kiosk, it's on 39th and 7th Avenue, and I said, how do I make a pair of pants? And they didn't really tell me how, but they sort of gave me opened the first door into the Garment District, and I dove right in. And you know, after a long, hard journey, I emerged from the dusty roads of the Garment District with a great pair of pants. And more than that, I emerged with a company. And so, you know, that's what I went over 2 years ago on the stage before. The video's online, PSFK.com. You can check it out if you want to know more about that. But Piers asked me to, you know, come and follow up and let everybody know what's happened since then. So I can tell you one of the immediate results of PSFK is I found out that I was an accidental bear. This was a bit of a surprise. I ended up on this website, and you know, it was amusing, it was entertaining. But they said one thing that actually made me kind of angry. They said, "Cutie, you could sell us anything," and you know, that should be flattering, but there was a problem. In the talk that I had done, I had this one slide, and this was sort of an operating hypothesis when we were starting Outlier, that a well-designed product sells itself, that there's no salespeople on a web page. And here, this site was out, they were outing me. They said, hey, you're a salesperson. And I was like, whoa, slow down. Like, I'm telling everybody I'm not a salesperson. And so I thought about it, and I realized they were right. And that, you know, there's an incredible amount of effort that goes into the web pages we make. A lot of the effort is to stripping them down to the bare essence. We're minimalists of a sort. It's trying to reduce the page to something really pure, the best photography, the essential text, everything you need to know about the product that we're putting up there. And so I realized that my hypothesis was wrong. But it was a good experience. I said, okay, all right, I got to come to grips with the fact that if I'm going to run a clothing company, that involves selling clothes. So then I started thinking, well, if I was wrong about being a salesperson, what else am I wrong about? And actually, before we get to that, the first thing I really started thinking about was, how the hell did I get here? I just told the story, like step by step. You know, one by one, how I got through the Garment District into a clothing company, putting clothes online. But how in the world did the door open up for me? Like, how could I know nothing about selling clothes, know nothing about making clothes? How could I get there? And so I started thinking a lot about quality and value. Really, really basic things. Every company in the world will tell you that they're all about quality, they're all about value. The problem is that the words have sort of started changing their meanings over the last 20, 30 years. A lot of companies, when they talk about value, they're really just talking about a low price. They're talking about making something cheap, making something as cheaply as possible. In other words, kind of making garbage. And on the flip side, like when people stop thinking about quality per se, and more you hear people talking about luxury, you know, selling you something that makes you feel like a king, something that feels like a queen, to selling you something for the most expensive price possible. And so what I realized is that the door was open because the industry had really split. And there were all these people, and this is true in the clothing industry, and I bet you it's true in other industries as well. There were a lot of people out there that were saying, hey, let's make stuff as cheap as possible. And on the other side, you have a lot of people saying, oh, let's make stuff as expensive as possible. And there was this big opening for these sort of old-fashioned, straight-up-the-middle values, like let's make the highest quality product and sell it at the best possible price. And that's where Outlier walked in the door. And that's when I started thinking, oh, what else am I wrong about? I was like, I reached this point where I'm really happy selling high-quality clothes at a great value. Like, there's no problem with that, but I'm probably wrong about some other people. I was out telling people we didn't have salespeople. And I was also out telling people we didn't do any marketing. People would be like, how do you market Outlier? And we're like, I don't know, we don't do any marketing. And I was like, I'm probably wrong about that. And so, and we did, we spent a lot of time with photography, and then we send out customer emails with MailChimp, actually, and we sent out one of those emails, so we're launching a new product, and a friend of mine wrote to me and was like, hey, I really like the marketing on this new product. And I was like, really? That's funny. I didn't even realize we were doing any marketing. Tell me more. And they were like, well, marketing is just telling a story for a commercial purpose. I was like, okay, that's a really, really broad definition of marketing, but I can't really argue with it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to just have to get comfortable with it. So I started thinking about what marketing I really liked and what marketing resonated with me. And I realized that the stuff I liked was indistinguishable from pure communication. It was delivering the right information to me in the right manner at the right time. And I was like, okay, if that's marketing, that's great. I love it when the right information shows up in front of me. But at the same time, when marketing's bad, it's really, really bad. There's a lot of people out there where the stories they're telling are very different from the products they're selling. And when you have that split, you end up with people essentially selling you a lie. And so I started thinking, if marketing's, when it's good, indistinguishable from communication, and when it's bad, it's really bad, maybe I shouldn't be thinking about marketing at all. We should just be thinking about this idea of pure communication. And so that's sort of how we started approaching it. We said, okay, what we're going to do is try and communicate as clearly as possible, both inside our company and outside our company. And what will emerge is actually marketing. It's not that we're not doing marketing, but by limiting the scope, I figured I'd limit the risks in a way. And so that's really what Outlier is about. We try and make the absolute best possible product, communicate it in the clearest possible manner, and that's Outlier.